2 weeks ago, we kind of did a soft launch into our new series, but we started by kind of getting the overall meta-narrative was the word we used, the meta-narrative of Scripture, where we are at this point. And so I just kind of put that in there for a refresher. We talked about, first thing, God's good design. We see that Genesis 1 through 2. God created a good earth. This dumpster fire is our doing, not God's. He created a good and perfect earth. Second part, we see Genesis 3 through 11, that broken relationships and a broken world were the result of what? Sin. Thank you for not saying Eve. They were the result of sin. 3, we see that God chooses a family to bless the world, the family of Abraham. We see that God delivers his people from slavery, which we just finished up our whole series on the book of Exodus. And then from Exodus 19 on, God is teaching his people how to establish a new civil society with him as the center. God forms a holy nation for his presence. That carries us through Leviticus. We see a redeemed but resistant people. Can I hear a witness? Anyone recognize themselves in that? A redeemed but sometimes resistant, sometimes, dare I say, rebellious people. And we're going to kick off tonight in the book of Numbers. So throughout this series, we're gonna mostly be in the book of Numbers, but then towards the end, we will dip into the book of Deuteronomy a little bit. If we were to look at those would be the last 2 books of the Pentateuch or the Torah, the books of the law, the first 5 books of the Bible, what would be what we call Torah or the law, Pentateuch. All those things mean about the same thing. Those are the last 2 books. It's the wrapping up of these narrative parts of the Old Testament. But if we wanted to look at the book of Numbers, we could look at that as God telling a story almost like a movie. And then the book of Deuteronomy is almost the commentary of the movie. It's the summation. It is Moses' grand final farewell sermons where he's kind of summing things up. And so let's jump into Numbers chapter 1. If you've got your Bible and you want to turn there, we're going to be in Numbers chapter 1. And I tend to stick with the NLT most of the time. And now that we've got this TV in the center, I can actually do the slides, Lon, for this so that we can have our passages up there. So we're going to break this first 2 chapters down into 3 sections. We're going to see the first one. God organizes before he mobilizes. God organizes his people before he mobilizes his people. And so let me just read the first little bit of Numbers chapter 1. I'm going to read the first 4 verses. It says, a year after Israel's departure from Egypt, the Lord spoke to Moses in the tabernacle in the wilderness of Sinai. On the first day of the 2nd month of that year, he said, from the whole community of Israel, record the names of all the warriors by their clans and families. List all the men 20 years or older who are able to go to war. You and Aaron must register the troops, and you will be assisted by one family leader from each tribe. So here God is basically saying, take a census, count the people. This is why we call it the book of Numbers. And for this non-math loving girl, I don't love math at all or numbers. And I'm thankful that there's no addition, there's no math facts or problems in this book. But it's called that because God is numbering and ordering the people. Let's look at a couple of thoughts that we have there. Who's got their Bible on them? Who's got their Bible with them? Who's got their Bible and you're comfortable reading out loud in front of people? Oh, good, Heidi. I wasn't going to force you. Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verse 33. And then, Kimberly, would you turn to Exodus 13, 17 through 18? First, we're going to see Israel is finally free from Egypt. The people are eager to move forward towards the promised land. They have spent a year plus. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't get lost in the weeds on some of this. Some things I do, but when it comes to dates and how many months and what day of the month, I don't care. And so I could have done the math, But I say between 38 and 39 years is a kind of where they are where they're walking, journeying through the wilderness, because I'm not incredibly precise. You should see the quilts I've made. They're not very precise. But what we see here is God does not rush them forward. He stops them. God commissions them. He tells them where to go. But before they get moving, he tells them, he stops them because he wants to do some things. God takes a census, and I love this. This teaches us some foundational things in this story. We're going to see that God values order over urgency. God values order over urgency. I love this about God. I may not be a detailed precision person, but y'all, I like order. Ask my husband when our house gets messy. It makes me hurt inside and outside, and I love order, and I love that. But I am a person of urgency, and I recognize that there are times where I have moved out of God's order, and I have responded to urgent moments instead of waiting on the Lord's guidance. But here he's stopping his people. Before you go out, I want you to take time. I want you to count your people, and we're going to focus on order. God values formation over speed. He values formation over speed. God could have gotten them there so much faster. Kimberly, would you read Exodus 13, 17 through 18 really loud for us? It specifically told us in Exodus that God could have taken them on a more direct, efficient route. But God cared more about formation than he did speed, because God was forming them. He was forming them into his holy people. But it was going to take a while for them to get Egypt out of them, where they had lived in bondage and slavery for 400 years. So it's going to take more than a quick 3 or 4 month journey to get the kingdom way in them instead of Egypt in them. In the wilderness, God is shaping a people, not just moving a crowd. Listen, we need to know that. Like, God could have moved that crowd, but he was forming a people. Organization is not bureaucracy. That's a hard word, bureaucracy. You got to say it slow. Instead, organization is intentional care. Organization, I've heard so many people talk about, well, I don't like organized religion. Well, I don't like disorganized religion. That's not honoring to God either, is it? And we should just be free. We should just, guys, organization, this isn't a dirty word. Being organized I think this honors God. I think it honors God when we are orderly and we do things rightly. Heidi, would you read 1 Corinthians 14:33 for us? Yeah. I don't think it directly mirrors apples to apples, but when we think of the days of creation, God did things in order and rightly. There was a process, there was organization, there was detail, care, and planning in the way he created the earth. And honestly, if you were, later on, we'll get to Numbers chapter 24, and there's a strange story about a guy named Balaam. And Balaam looks out over the tents of Jacob. Remember, I told you when we see the word Jacob, a lot of the times it's interchangeable for Israel. He looks out over and he says, how beautiful are the tents of Jacob. Like, this was orderly. This gives me the idea that the year before, while they were at the base of Mount Sinai, from the Red Sea to Mount Sinai, and then the year that they are encamped at the mountain, at the foot of the mountain, it gives me this idea that there was disorder. Clearly, we see there was disorder in the golden calf debacle, right? But because God is so specific, count the people, and in a minute we're going to see such specific ordering of the people, of the clans, where they live, how they live, it gives me the idea that there was disorder before. So do this now. We cross the bridge. I'll remind you of this because it's been a while. We cross the bridge when we read something that is written thousands of years ago, right? It's not to me, it's for me. This isn't prescriptive, it's descriptive, we keep saying. So I don't look at this, and God isn't telling me to take a census, but is there a principle that can cross the bridge from their time to our time, a principle in this passage. And so kind of be thinking about that. And there's a space for you to write notes. If you can think of a principle that crosses that bridge, hold on to that thought and write it down so that we can come back to it in a minute. Number 2, every tribe mattered. No one is overlooked. Every single tribe mattered. I love that. Let me read starting at verse 17, and I might skip some parts of it. Starting at 17, chapter 1. So Moses and Aaron called together these chosen leaders, and they assembled the whole community of Israel on that very day. That very day, no delay. Like, I like that about Moses and Aaron. On that very day, they got busy. All the people were registered according to their ancestry by their clans and families. The men of Israel who were 20 years old or older were listed one by one, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. So Moses recorded their names in the wilderness of Sinai. This is the number of men 20 years old or older who were able to go to war, as their names were listed in the records of their clans and families. And we see there the tribes. Notice it drops off Levi. Levi is the third of the brothers, and we'll get to that in a minute, why it drops off Levi. Let me pick up verse 44. These were the men registered by Moses and Aaron and the 12 leaders of Israel, all listed according to their ancestral descent. They were registered by families, all the men of Israel who were 20 years old or older and able to go to war. The total number was 603,550. But this total did not include the Levites. So is God leaving them out? I just said every tribe mattered, no one is overlooked. God doesn't actually leave them out. For the Lord had said to Moses, do not include the tribe of Levi in the registration. Do not count them with the rest of the Israelites. Put the Levites in charge of the tabernacle of the covenant, along with all its furnishings and equipment. And I'm going to stop there for a minute. Who else has got their Bible? Someone turn to Isaiah chapter 43, verse 1. And then someone else turn to Luke 12, 6 through 7. Okay? So we're going to see this. In Egypt, Israel was treated like numbers. What a dehumanizing thing when you think about Nazi prison camps, like to strip them of their name and to reduce them to a number. How sad that I don't even remember what book it was that I read, but I read it to our kids many years ago. But in that book, the mom and dad had like 5 or 6 kids, and they called them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Like, they just called them by a number. They didn't even get a name. But God is showing us, he's showing us his heart here because he's letting them be known by name, not just by their family relation. In each tribe is counted, each family is named, and each group has a place. I love that, don't you? And what we're going to see here, a census. If you know anything about David, remember as he gets later on in life, he starts to take a census. And I believe it was Joab who was his military commander, like his top general. Joab, who was a character, by the way, like shady, kind of some things he did were shady. But even shady Joab says to King David, and he says, you really don't want to do that, King David. You really shouldn't do that, because God had expressly prohibited taking a census, not because God hated numbers, but he wanted to prohibit them taking a census for a few reasons. There were 3 things. Don't take a census of how many horses you have, right? How many fighting men? I can't remember the 3. I didn't study this. It's just off the top of my head right now as I'm thinking about it. God doesn't hate a census, but God did not want David to take a census so that he could build up his morale going into battle. He wanted David to trust him. And so he didn't. So if you know, I don't have to worry. We got more people than they do. Like, you're building up your courage based on what you have instead of building up your courage based on who you serve. And so here, though, God is telling them, I want you to take a census. And this census is not about strength. It's about belonging. That's what it's really about. It's about belonging. So this census is going to declare a couple things. It declares that you belong to a people. You are not independent. You belong to a people. This is for us, you guys. We can cross this bridge right now. We are not, we pride ourselves on being independent people. We're Rosie the Riveter, can-do attitudes. But the idea, that's not a biblical idea. God values community. God values family. He made the church. Like, this is God's beautiful, beautiful idea that we be part of a body. Is this a perfect body? No, you guys are not perfect people. And you are led by an imperfect girl. We're not perfect people, but this is God's design in his body, is that we belong to a people. No tribe is unnecessary in God's covenant family. But it also reminds them that you belong and you matter to God. You matter to God. You're seen, you're known, and you are included in God's beautiful family. Who turned to Isaiah 43, verse 1? Let's hear it, Lon. I have called you by name. You are mine. Let's look at Luke chapter 12, verse 6 through 7. Anyone have that? Let's hear it, Jordan. That means that bird you hit with your car, God knows that bird. Like, that amazes me that he knows, he counts the sparrows. Like, we are so personally and deeply loved and known by God. That kind of blows my mind that he knows me. Here's why it blows my mind, because I know me. And I know what a mess I am sometimes. And he loves me. My goodness, y'all, if he loves me, you can love me. You don't even know all the things about me. If God can love me, if God can love you, I can love you too. So if you got any bridges you want to cross, go ahead and write that down and think about that for a few minutes. And then number 3, let's look at that. Identity precedes assignment. Identity preceded assignment in God's narrative with these people. Identity precedes assignment. Let me read just a few verses here, starting in chapter 2. Then the Lord gave these instructions to Moses and Aaron. When the Israelites set up camp, each tribe will be assigned its own area. The tribal divisions will camp beneath their family banners on all 4 sides of the tabernacle, but at some distance from it. And then he's going to go on and he's going to list the divisions. I printed on the back 2 different diagrams. I'll tell you, my whole life, the top diagram is what I have been taught my whole life, what the tribal placement looks like. And I think we don't actually know. But today is the first time in all my life that I have seen diagrams that show it drawn in a different way. I think we latch on to this first one because it's in the shape of a cross, and we love that, and I love that. And I've heard many Bible teachers talk about how that points to Jesus. That is a foreshadowing of the cross. That could be, but this other one could be too, where it feels a little bit more balanced, doesn't it? Because man, if you're Ephraim on the top, you're on the west. You are on the least favored side. Now, in our culture, we go west to east, like we write that way. We visually, this is the way we orient things. But in that Middle Eastern culture, the sun rises in the east, like being the east. Like this was for Judah. This was an honor for Judah to be on the east side facing the sunrise. So I think that's just kind of fascinating to see the different diagram. Has anyone have any experience seeing the diagram in a different way? Or have you all seen it the way the top shows? That's how you've seen it. That's even in Bible college, and it very well could be. And so when I get to heaven, I'm not going to even remember to ask. But hopefully there's like a TV where we're going to be able to see all the history play out. I want to see how it all worked out. But what we do know is what's at the center, what is at the heart of the people. And we're going to talk more about that in 2 weeks. But at the heart of the camp is the tabernacle, is the presence of God. And then what we're going to see, we see the different tribes around the tabernacle, but the Levites, we just read that how God said, don't count the Levites, don't count them among you, because the Levites, this is kind of a really interesting thing. The Levitical tribe, this is one area I did kind of go down a rabbit hole today, but the Levites were the chosen tribe. They were a significant tribe. Anyone remember why they were kind of set apart? For the priest, but why? Because God's original plan was the firstborn. Like that was God's original plan, was that the firstborn from among you be set apart. Why all of a sudden now do we have the Levites being the priestly tribe? It goes back to the golden calf. And I loved studying this today. If we go to Exodus chapter 32, I'm going to flip there real quick. Exodus chapter 32, this is the place where Moses comes down from Mount Sinai with the 10 Commandments. And he gets down there, and remember Aaron built a cow. He built a cow out of gold. And Moses is irate, and he tells them, he says, who is with me? Let me go ahead and read it. Chapter 32, verse 26. So he stood at the entrance of the camp and he shouted, this is Moses, all of you who are on the Lord's side, come here and join me. And all the Levites gathered around him. All the Levites gathered around him. Y'all, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of tribes. One tribe stood with him. Verse 27, Moses told them, this is what the Lord, the God of Israel says. Each of you take your swords and go back and forth from one end of the camp to the other. Kill everyone, even your brothers, friends, and neighbors. The Levites obeyed Moses' command, and about 3,000 people died that day. Then Moses told the Levites, today you have ordained yourself for the service of the Lord, for you obeyed him, even though it meant killing your own sons and brothers. Today you have earned a blessing. And I'm going to tell you, that's hard to read. The thought of being that zealous, being so zealous for anything, but their zeal, like they were so zealous for God, for the heart of God. And God looks at that and says, you now are set apart. You're the people. The original plan for the firstborns being the priests among you, no more. Now we're going to have the Levitical priesthood. If you look at the center of it, you'll see the four different, there's the Merari tribe, the Merari, how do you say that? The Kohathites, right? We've got, and this is so little, I can't even see. We've got the Kohathites, the Gershonites, and the Merarites. And on one side, at the entrance of the tabernacle, it's not a giant mass of people. It's Moses, Aaron, and Aaron's family. Those are the people, and they're the ones that camp right at the center, right at the front of the entrance of the tabernacle. And they've got a big job that they're charged with, is guarding the holiness, guarding the presence of God. So look at this. Each tribe has a position, they have a banner, and they have a purpose. Now, I could get into what are the banners? I went down this trail. I probably spent 45 minutes researching, like, what do these banners look like? And the Bible doesn't really tell us. The Bible does not give us any great clue and idea for what those banners look like. But what we do know is we know from history. I kind of wrote some of the things down. We know that these images, they're not in the Torah, but rabbinical tradition tells us what some of those banners might have looked like. So we don't know if this is scriptural. Rabbinical tradition, that's informative and helpful, but we know that I kind of wrote down there was an ox, a wolf, an eagle, an olive tree, and of course on the Levites, they think that the Urim and Thummim, which were in the breastplate of the high priest, those two little stones, remember we talked about that felt like a magic 8-ball, but are not a magic 8-ball, that's what scholars believe may have been on those banners. So nothing to build doctrine on, but kind of interesting to know, isn't it? Here's what we're going to see. Each tribe has a position, a banner, and a purpose. I noticed the order of events, though. Order matters. First thing, they're counted. We see in chapter 1, they are counted. Next thing, they are positioned. And then third, they're sent. They don't go before they are ordered and positioned. Let's cross a bridge there. They are counted, they are positioned, and they are sent. Can you see a bridge to cross in that passage, in that section? Y'all are so quiet tonight. You're precious. Yeah, you got to wait on God's timing, and don't get started before you're ready. Don't get started before the preparation has happened. I think that God does not say in this passage, he does not say, prove yourself, prove that you belong, prove your worth, prove yourself. Instead, he says, you belong, now walk in that. It's all about identity in this passage. That they're numbered by God, they're named by God, but they are being prepared, they're being readied for the journey. God doesn't just say, get on, get moving, hurry up, go, go, go. God is training them, he is building them. That's where we saw the whole last half of Exodus, where God is giving them laws of how to live in society together. This is a critical discipleship truth for us today. This is a bridge we can cross. When identity is unclear, activity becomes exhausting, doesn't it? If you don't know who you are, if you don't know what you're supposed to do, it's exhausting. But man, I'll tell you, when identity is secure, you know who you are, you know what God has told you to do, that is obedience. That obedience becomes joyful. So there's some bridges we'll cross here, but we're gonna pause now, and we're gonna move into a time of prayer. And as you pray, if the Lord reminds you of anything in these stories, jot that down. I'd love to hear from you at the end of the evening so that you've got time to process. I recognize I've had all day to process, and I'm just telling you stuff and expecting you to respond right now, but I want to give you some time to marinate and think on this. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna take about 10 minutes, and we're going to find a quiet place in the sanctuary to pray. You know what? Some of us haven't slowed down long enough today to quiet our hearts and just talk to the Lord. Some of us have been so busy working for Jesus, we haven't taken time in our day to just slow it down and spend time talking to the Lord. And so Brent's going to play some music, and we're just going to find a quiet place to pray on your own. What's on your heart? Tell it to God, because if it's on your heart, it's on his mind. And then I'll call you back together. We'll pray together, and then we will share if the Lord's shown you any bridges to cross. So let's find a place to do that now.